Hello and welcome to the Michael Mama Show, Ancient Secrets Revealed. We're coming to you from Mount Soma, home of the Sri Someshwari Temple in the mountains of western North Carolina. Okay, today we're going to go into the predictions for 2025. You know, Scotty, I was looking and we've done predictions now for how many years? But we've been 100% accurate. I mean, we just talk about general trends, you know?
Yeah.
But so far, every year we've been completely 100%, which is pretty good, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Before we get started, there are a few opening comments I wanted to have. One, that Archana, 10,000 Linga Archana that's going to be happening in India. Punjaji and Lakshmi leave. In just a few days, they leave for India. They'll be gone 6 weeks, and while they're there, they'll be performing that Archana. Now, just so you know, they're like takeoffs on that. We're talking about doing the full-blown 10,000 with the, mud from the snake holes and all that. Lingas made from 10,000 lingas made from that. And that, to really do that Archana fully and totally is laborious. There's a lot to it. It's complicated. It's a lot of work to set it up. And that's why it hasn't been done for at least 1,000 years. And the pundits suspect hadn't even been done in Kali Yuga, 5,000 years now. And so it's an exciting thing. But little takeoffs on it. I mean, even when we inaugurated the temple, we did a little takeoff on it where I think we had 1,000 maybe, or I can't remember how many little crystal lingas. You might remember that, Scotty.
That was amazing.
But that's just a little, it's kind of a tangential thing. And what I'm talking about is really doing it 100% fully. And that's what we're talking about doing. And if anybody out there is interested, we have a couple of people who are stepping forward. If anybody else would be interested in helping to support that, if you go to michaelmamas.net and look at this particular podcast, 2025 predictions, scroll down to the bottom and you can see where you can click a link and donate to that Archana. We'd like to raise at least $5,000 if we can. So next topic is the H-1B visas. You know about that, Scotty?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing because what they are is they're visas to kind of expedite people coming in to this country from other countries. For employment. And it seems like the debates are, some people are saying, well, that's taking away jobs that would otherwise be for Americans. And a lot of people want the H-1B visas, the argument goes, because they can get cheaper labor, but then that cuts out the Americans. The other argument, and this is a really interesting one, is that and Vivek Ramaswamy did some really good commentary on this, but he even talked about our culture and how our culture in the United States has changed. And well, just to say it directly, it's like people here, a lot of people want to just kind of slide by, and they're not really willing to put in the hard work. And as a result of that, a lot of college students aren't going into engineering. They see it's too hard. And so they go into other majors that are very simple. And even the engineering students, and I'm not saying all of them, but there's a tendency here where they're not really applying themselves as fully as they could, or as fully as the engineering students in other countries apply themselves. And I have a friend who's a former student who has worked in Silicon Valley. He's worked with Amazon and for Apple, different, big tech companies in Silicon Valley. And he said there's this kind of in the think tanks, the guys that are really developing the cutting edge of tech. In those think tanks, there's kind of a joke that goes around that's saying, there's one white guy and all the rest are either Indian or Chinese or something. And so the joke is that they have one white guy in there and it's like the token white guy. And I mean, that says a lot because really you need to stay ahead in tech. And now with artificial intelligence coming about and incidentally, Scotty, did you research more thoroughly the Archana, right?
Yeah.
You sent me that one, and then I think you did more and sent it to Punji and Lakshmi.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did they ask you for specifics, or did you just?
I sent them the stuff. I didn't hear anything more. It was pretty detailed, the research that I found,
I see. It's remarkable,
Yeah, crazy.
And even in that, it was amazing how much of what we said in the podcast. It's almost like did artificial intelligence access our podcast to come up with all that? Because it was right down the line,
right.
And they actually said in there that to really perform the Archana thoroughly is really difficult, really challenging, takes a lot of work, a lot of effort, a lot of details. And so it's really interesting how it's so thoroughly confirmed or reaffirmed what we already knew, really.
Not only that, it was interesting how at first it wanted to give us kind of the shortcut. And you said to me, well, God, this is like, a little watered down or something. So I changed the prompt to, no, I want this exactly as if it were done in the most strictest,
ancient
possible.
times.
And then it's like, oh, okay. And then
and so that's what you got, and that's what, and then you sent that. Is that what you sent?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. All right.
Yeah.
So see, that's the thing. To get back to the H-1B, we need to hire the greatest minds in the world. And if they're American, fabulous. But if they're not, wherever they come from, and the H-1B would accommodate that. I'm not particularly in favor of H-1B if it's just some employer wanting to get cheap labor and cut out, the labor force in America. But I don't think that's really the main impetus for H-1B. Another thing interesting that I wanted to talk about in this opening is the Panama Canal. And I think, Jimmy Carter, that's really interesting. Jimmy Carter sold the Panama Canal to Panama for $1. And I get his motivation for that because in the beginning, I think they said that we would transfer it over to Panama after so many years, and those years expired. But what happened after that is that now the Chinese have taken over a good portion of the Panama Canal. It sounds like they're planning to take it over more fully. And also they're charging the United States, and not a little bit. They're charging them a ton to use the Panama Canal. And so the question becomes, is that in the spirit of the agreement? And then the ideas come about of, and there's the Monroe Doctrine. You would think that would apply. I don't know. But what's coming to play is they're even talking about blockading the Panama Canal and the United States then gaining control of it. And the Panama Canal is so powerful in its geopolitical influence. If the United States wanted to, and if they took over the Panama Canal, then by disallowing the Chinese to use the Panama Canal, I mean, I think that's over $1 million of expense per cargo ship, because then they have to go all the way down the southern tip of South America and around. And I forget who it was, General, I can't think of his name now, but he was saying that if we did that and we just told China, if you invade Taiwan, then we're going to not let you use the Panama Canal, that would be it. China would not even think of invading Taiwan, because it would just cripple China to have to go around with all their cargo ships, you know. But see, that's an interesting thing, because I'll tell you what it made me think of. Do you know who was it? Brezhnev, I think that's who it was, the leader of
USSR.
Russia, made a deal with Ukraine that said that if Ukraine gave up its nuclear arsenal to Russia, then Russia would give Ukraine its autonomy from the Soviet Union, you know, that idea. And so they did it. Then after they got the nuclear weapons back, and now Putin, you know, wanted to kind of take over at least part of Ukraine. And in a way, it's a similar thing. I mean, if a previous leader did a kind of a stupid deal, can a later leader say, hey, you know, that's not okay, we're not doing it? Particularly if that country was sort of in violation of the spirit of the agreement. I don't think when Carter gave up the Panama Canal, he was thinking that Panamanians would let China take it over and charge the United States exorbitant fees to use it. I don't know, though. You can see how these arguments go both directions, and it'll be interesting to see where the chips fall on that one. Anything else on that, Scotty, before we go on?
Well, you know, China's talking about like building another canal too in Honduras or somewhere, one of the other countries.
Really? Well,
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
And I think there were some stipulations in the agreement that they would treat the United States fairly, or whatever. There's some language that they're citing too about that.
What's the deal on the Monroe Doctrine? You know, that was done, of course, a long time ago, and it was like no more colonizing or no more taking over. You know, anything in the Americas by countries outside of that area.
Non-intervention, yeah.
Yeah, non-intervention.
No recolonization.
Yeah. I wonder what the deal is on that whole thing. And I haven't heard a word about that with respect to the Panama Canal, you know.
No, I think there was something in the agreement that we gave them for the dollar to do that there were certain stipulations, and if they weren't following them, then.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that would be interesting.
I heard some reference to that. Yeah.
Oh, well, that would change everything if it was actually in writing.
Yeah.
That's interesting to see how.
Yeah, I don't think you would just, you know, be able to like, okay,
sign it
yeah,
over
here, just give me $1 and.
Yeah, we'll call it even. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll see. Well, so okay, regarding 2025. In a nutshell, largely my predictions for 2025 are rolled into my predictions for 2024, which is namely all the chaos that we've seen in this past year, all the conflicts, all of that was so predictable. And the international wars, all the conflicts within the United States, and the attempted assassinations of Donald Trump, and the impeachments, and I mean, what a mess, you know. And that sort of thing will continue for the first half of 2025. And, you know, you have to keep in mind that, you know, I think it's a well-known fact that there's a tremendous amount of corruption in all governments, certainly the U.S. government. And, you know, Trump is talking about stamping that out. And if the deep state, you know, the swamp evidently runs very deeply. And those people are now, with Trump winning the presidency, oh my God, they did everything they could to prevent that. And so now they're going to do everything they can to undermine that, because if all that happens, a lot of those people are going to, well, first of all, they're going to lose their gravy train. 90-some% now of government workers don't even show up at the office. They work from home and they essentially don't do much of anything. All that would get eliminated, and it goes right up the ladder to the top leaders. So the vested interest to undermine Trump is huge. And that will continue. I mean, they're not going to stop. Certainly not for the first half of 2025. And you can see a lot of places where it's already amped up. They're like a wild animal, cornered against the wall, and they're all just fangs and claws, you know? So we're going to see that continue for the first half of 2025 as we're seeing it now. But concurrently with that, we're going to start to see advancements economically, in the arena of tech, and the accomplishments and things. And also so much now is, you know, woke culture is kind of running out of vogue, sort of like bell bottoms did, you know. And so we have these two things going on concurrently. But towards the last half of 2025, I think things are going to be getting so much better that everything will just calm down. And it's not just geopolitics here, it's also even the weather. You're going to see storms and things in the first half of 2025. All the war, of course, and everything, all that's going to subside. And then into 2026, we're going to start to really feel and start to experience, you know, a golden age. And so we have all that in our future. And the truth is going to be coming out in so many arenas, from what's going on, you know, underneath the left paw of the Sphinx in Egypt, to the truth about COVID. All that is coming out. Healthcare, big pharma, there are going to be huge changes there. There's going to be conflict along the way, but it's going to pan out as a good thing. So many people made billions off of COVID, for example, with respect to big pharma. And now there's this product, Ozempic, and it's being passed out like jelly beans, and they're making a fortune off of it. And they charge way more than they need to, just because they can. All that's going to get sorted out. So much corruption is going to get sorted out. The truth about UFOs, whatever that is, that's going to come out. At some point, the JFK assassination, the truth of that's going to come out. Evidently, Trump said that he would have already brought that out, except there's some people that are still alive that it would really undermine their lives. So for that reason, the truth about JFK assassination may be postponed. We'll see about that. And what's really going to, you know, there's this expression about new scientific discoveries. And when they come out at first, they say, oh, that's ridiculous. It just can't be possibly true. The people coming up with that are just fools. And then there's a slow progression to, well, yeah, maybe. And it ultimately ends up, this progression of opening to it more and more, it ultimately ends up, yeah, well, it's true, but we've always known that. So the people that come up with it, they never get much credit, you know. And that's going to happen to all the knowledge of the unified field, all the knowledge in the Vedic literature, even the language that's used. I mean, obviously, the language of Western science is very powerful, very valuable, but it's a small subset of a broader language that takes us to a place of deeper understanding. And that's in the Vedic terminology, that's they're talking about shastra and ashtara. Shastra is, well, oftentimes they apply it to like weapons, and shastra is like just crude weapons, bows and arrows or whatever. And ashtara would refer to like the celestial weapons that you hear described in the Mahabharata and the Puranas and things like that. Beyond nuclear, even, you know, at least our understanding of nuclear. And so you see, modern science now, classical physics now, they focus mostly on the fire element. But we know that there are 5 elements, you know, or there are fire, water, akash, space. And so the deeper technology has its foundation in the mantras, in ashtara, in deeper understandings of nature, and the language that captures that then is more a fuller, an all-embracing language of nature itself, Sanskrit, you know. And so what's going to start to happen is that sort of knowledge and understanding is going to emerge more and more fully in the West, and I call it the West because it's kind of like that mentality has taken over the field of science now, all over the world. And so those two terms, shastra and ashtara, are really important terms, and they apply to all aspects of life, not just weapons, you know. And it'll be interesting. We'll see that unfold more and more. A couple other important terms to know, at least conceptually. You don't have to memorize the terms, so it's nice. But apurva and adrishta. Adrishta means unseeable. And the idea is that even in the field of karma, there are levels at work that can't be identified. They're just not seeable. Even in a Jyotish chart, you know, even the best Jyotishis' predictions aren't that accurate. I know Chakrapani's, Scotty, whom you were close with, I think he told you, is that where I heard it? That nobody really knows how to do Jyotish. Didn't he say something like that?
Yeah. That during this time of being, I think he was referring to the like Kali Yuga.
Shastra.
Yeah, it's the people's ability to even see it. It's just not there, you know?
Yeah, it's just not there. Yeah. And adrishta speaks to that level that's so deep that it's just flat out unseeable, and different degrees of unseeability based on, you know, the yuga. And then there's also apurva. It even says, I think Lord Krishna said this to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita: the course of action is unfathomable. The whole thing is unfathomable. And a lot of that is because it's a function of the nature of the human mind. There's limitations to it. You know, we look at fish swimming around in our ponds, and it's like, oh man, they're so limited in what they know and what they see and how they function. And but there needs to be a greater level of humility in just the nature of the human physiology. Now, we can develop cities, you know, supernatural powers, if you will. Well, like, for example, one of the cities is to know any one thing. So if you focus on any one thing, you can gain the knowledge of that thing. But they contrast that to the awareness of God that knows fully all things all the time simultaneously. And that's just a different type of nervous system, if you will. but it's a real value to get a grasp of apurva and adrishta and how that applies to our lives, who it is and what it is we are. It cultivates a level of humility that I think oftentimes is lacking, even in the field of you name the field, politics. Don't Isn't it common to take such a solid stand on so many things, and some of them in the extreme are just self-evident. It seems, certainly to me, it seems self-evident, but the only true knowing is not knowing, right there. There's an unfathomable nature to things. And the underlying mechanics of so many things is unseeable, certainly not identifiable with clear intellectual acuity. We think our way through life, but really we feel our way through life. Our feelings lie deeper than our thoughts. And we can sometimes sense into and feel into those fields of adrishta and apurva, at least to a greater degree than we can actually intellectually identify them. Whereas modern mentality these days is all about glomming onto a narrative, which is an intellectual paradigm, an intellectual perspective, and saying, okay, there's truth. And there lies no adrishta or apurva because we got it figured out. And it creates an absurd arrogance, really.
And Michael, is that
the flip side of wisdom? The flip side of wisdom is humility. Right. What's that, Scotty?
Is that a kind of a product of Kali Yuga too, where it kind of those forces that are like permeating everything are turning that equation upside down, where you're thinking your way versus feeling your way more, and that feels like the way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, modern the scientific approach is fire. What about earth, air, water, and akash? There's so much more going on there than even affords itself to the current approach to thinking. Yeah.
And that would go with what you're talking about too, with like the once we go into Sat Yuga, or that period of Sat Yuga, and what Chakrapani was saying is that, that's when the people were able to really see the charts or whatever, or focus on see those deeper things, is during those times.
Absolutely. And it's not just Jyotish, it's not just astrology, it's everything.
An example.
There will be engineers, electrical, mechanical, etc., in Sat Yuga.
Yeah.
But their knowledge will include that deeper knowledge of ashtara, which is, that accommodates all five elements. So that's going to be a huge difference. And that's coming, but that'll be a while, and it'll be a continuum, a blossoming process. If you just look at the news over the past really centuries, hundreds, thousands of years, really, the whole thing is so ridiculous. I mean, if all the energy we put into wars would have been put into prosperity and abundance and health and fulfillment for all humanity, the whole world, everybody would be living like a millionaire. Everybody. It's just, I mean, sometimes you got to think that if there are UFO people out there watching, they just might be, boy, these people are nuts. They keep cannibalizing themselves and destroying everything. And there's no sense to it whatsoever. But we keep doing it. And now the rogue nations, what's going to happen, you see, is this dawning process that's starting in the transition in 2025 and then 2026 and beyond. These rogue nations are going to come to see that working with the global community will serve them better than opposing it. the whole perspective on globalization and what it means is going to change. Right now, to a great extent, globalization means taking over, the Panama Canal, taking over third world countries. One world government that's not in support of every nation, but makes every other nation subservient. But in time and the point we're already starting to sense it, that globalization will become the idea that if all nations work together, but with their own self-interest, like an enlightened self-interest, but nevertheless in harmony with the other nations. And I think some of the things I've heard Putin say, I think the whole Ukraine thing has even helped for him to wake up to reality that, hey, we are way better off if we start working together instead of fighting. And he said things that allude to that. For one, he's ready to talk, and he's ready with respect to peace in Ukraine, and he's ready and willing to talk to Trump whenever the time comes. And I think I really do get the sense that Putin, and I know there's a lot of horrific things that are attributed to Putin, and I'm not denying any of that. But I'm thinking that there is a waking up process going on there, a realization process there. He needs the European markets, and alienating them is not serving him. All that's going to change. Another interesting nation is North Korea, Kim Jong-un. I think he's in a real dilemma right now because, just look at North Korea and then look at South Korea. North Korea could easily become abundant and prosperous, kind of along the lines of South Korea. But so what's the dilemma? What's the problem? Well, what would happen to him, Kim Jong-un, what would happen to him if they did start to open their markets and become more open? First of all, he'd probably get assassinated, imprisoned. Who knows what they would do to him for how he suppressed and harmed so many people in that country. I don't know why, for so long. So how would you even make even if you saw that it would behoove the nation, how could he make the transition without completely compromising and destroying himself? But everybody's days are numbered. I think the time is coming when that could take place. And Xi Jinping of China, well, right now he's still hell-bent on having the Chinese Communist Party take over the world early. But even the Chinese people are opposing it. There's conflict there. There's so much tension there. There's so much economic problems there. We're going to see that transform for sure. And it will become a family of humanity where all nations work together. But they're still competitive, reasonable, but in a manner that isn't so destructive, but is actually constructive for the world. It's interesting to look at Prime Minister Modi of India. He's a smart guy, and he's looking out for his country. And certainly he has conflicts with China for what happened up in Kashmir, and he owns India controls an island. I can't think of the name of the island, but it's right in a strait going through Indonesia there. And that strait is really critical to the Chinese. And he's kind of got a control of that strait at its throat, So there's a tension there. And again, just if they worked together, but it's not happening. But Modi is a guy who goes where it just makes most sense for the prosperity of his country. He'll deal with the Russians. He'll deal with whomever. And he tries to keep peace. He has his perspectives. The Indians in general have their perspectives. When Trump went and visited India, I mean, a rousing reception, you know. So Modi is going to, I don't know if we'd say cleverly or wisely, or he's navigating the waters in a manner that best serves his country. With a finger not just on ideology, but also practicality, you know. And then there's what's his name? Javier Milei. You know who he is? The guy of the head of Argentina.
Argentina.
That's a really interesting thing, because Argentina was really in a bad way with their former leader. But this guy is economically turning the country around for the better. Freedom of speech, etc. And see what we're seeing, the point is, what we're seeing is these inklings of movement globally, of a completely different notion of globalization, where globalization is working in a harmonious way, still competitive and like that, but still working in a harmonious way to maximize the health of a country, as opposed to creating wars that just debilitate all countries. All that's happening, and we're seeing it happening. And so you see, we're already starting to see the dawn, if we look, of a golden age, an enlightened age, you know. And there's my predictions for 2025 and beyond. Anything to add, Sakari, before we close?
No, I think that's it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Everybody, thank you for listening, and we'll have a happy new year, I'm sure.